Hey, good evening, everybody. Well, evening for me. Could be any time of day for you. This is Marty, the Raging Owlbear on social media, and I got a question that I saw on social media that somebody asked about the giants that come in the Assault of the Giants board game. They're looking to not only get the board game, but perhaps expand their miniatures collection using the minis in the board game. Now, they are smaller than the D&D miniatures, so I wanted to give an overview of the different minis that come in the game and how they compare with the old versus the new miniatures. So let's start with the Hill Giants over here. So here you see the new Hill Giant, which is really quite extensive. Actually, he's a handful, a literal handful. And then you go over here, and this is actually one of the Hill Giants from back in the early 2000s. I want to say 2005 or 2006 for the D&D miniatures game. And as you can see back then, plastics were actually much more expensive and sculpts were a little more difficult. So they made the sculpts pretty small, even for the giants. So this was a third edition giant. There is another Hill Giant from that era that's a little bit larger, but as you can see, they've grown quite a bit in the last few years. Now here is the board game piece. So the board game piece is actually not that much smaller than the old Hill Giant. He is a little bit scrawny though, and if we compare to, say, this is an ogre that was made in the late 2009, 2010, I want to say, maybe off by a couple years, but you can see they grew the ogres significantly over the course of the D&D miniatures. So the board game Hill Giant is pretty small when you put him up against, even some of the older miniatures, although he is as big as the old Hill Giant. But obviously the newer miniatures have grown over the years. So yeah, there's the ogre, there's the troll. The trolls used to be much smaller. The ogres were a little bit smaller. And as you can see, the Hill Giants have gotten significantly larger. And the ones in the game are smaller because they're also trying to fit them all in the game box and sell at a reasonable price. So but some of the other miniatures in the game did a little better. So let's move over here we'll go ahead and look at the Fire Giants. So this is the newer Fire Giant from the Assault of the Giants line. It's one of the huge minis. You can see it's pretty big. This is the one from the board game right here, and it is smaller. But if we actually take a look at the other Fire Giants, this is the Reaper miniature Fire Giant, and here's one of the old Fire Giants from the HeroScape game, but this was also a D&D miniature. It's the same sculpt. They just reskinned it for HeroScape. The board game Fire Giant is just about as big, actually. He's a little less bulky in terms of girth and whatnot. I mean, this guy definitely looks heavier, but size-wise, not too bad. He's smaller than his new compatriot here, but he's certainly fairly comparable to a Reaper Giant. Although the new Reapers, I don't have any of the new Reaper Giants, but the new ones are a little bit bigger. So let's move those guys out of the way and look at Stone Giants. Stone Giants did not do well in the board game. So this is one of the newer Stone Giants from the Tyranny of Dragons line, or thereabouts. I don't have the brand newish one, but the newest giant, the female giant from the Storm King Thunder line, is basically the same size as this one. And it's actually this sculpt, but you can see that the Stone Giant is significantly smaller and more scrawny from the board game than this one. Now, and here's a couple of the Stone Giants. This is one from the Pathfinder Battles line from WizKids over the last few years, and this is one of the old D&D miniatures line. So, actually the board game one is still smaller than those, but it's not terrible. It could do in a pinch, but yeah, it wouldn't be too frightening for the players on the table. It's not much bigger than a medium. It's basically a large mini at best. Okay, let's move those guys aside too. look at some of the Frost Giants. And I think the Frost Giants did probably the best of any of them. So this is the brand new Frost Giant, the female with a sword. And this is the board game counterpart now. She's significantly smaller than her full-size counterpart. But if you look at the Frost Giants from the old D&D Miniatures game, and again, another HeroScape Frost Giant, also produced by Wizards of the Coast back in the day, she's actually, you know, on par in terms of size. She's not significantly smaller. This is one of the other Reapers. This is actually a Reaper Fire Giant also, but I put her in there just sort of as a size comparison. So if you have Reaper Giants, the Assault of the Giants board game giants fit pretty well to that scale. And then, well, last but not least, we'll look at some of the Storm Giants and Cloud Giants. I don't have a big Storm Giant miniature from the new one. This is the newest Cloud Giant. Let's bring these guys a little closer here. This is the newest Cloud Giant. This is one of the largest new giants in terms of height. You know, not as bulky as the Hill Giant, but really tall. This particular Cloud Giant is actually pretty big. It's a very impressive miniature. Here's the Sansuri figure from Assault of the Giants, from the board game. You can see she is significantly smaller. She comes up to just about his waist, a little bit higher than his waist. But if we look here, also, these are the Storm Giants that come in the board game, and they're pretty big. They're decent sized, you know, especially when they're still smaller than say the Frost Giant over here. But they do, again, if we bring in the Reaper Cloud Giant and the other sort of the female Cloud Giant, or I think it was a Cloud Giant from the Reaper line. You can see that size-wise, they're not too bad. They actually, from a scale perspective, are not bad if you own Reaper minis. So, you know, if you're able to get these really nice Assault of the Giant, the new Assault of the Giant minis, obviously those are pretty cool. But I know they're getting pretty pricey on the secondary market. It's really hard to find. It's really hard to find the booster packs online so much anymore these days. But I mean, they're still out there. You can look around. But if you want some giants quickly, and you have some Reaper Giants, or you have some of the older D&D Miniatures Giants from the old school D&D stuff, you know, it's it might be worth picking up the board game to get yourself an array of giants for a little more than $50. I think it's running on Amazon, maybe a little bit more, but and you know, if you want to even go for the pre-painted ones, I think the pre-painted set is as cheap as $75 or $80 now for the Assault of the Giants board game. And if you want to spend that much money, well, it's actually, you know, for the time and money that it takes to paint these guys, it might not be, you know, too bad, because it would save you a lot of time, and it probably look really nice, the premium painted versions. You know, when I purchased the game, it was still over $100 for the pre-painted set, but now they've come down significantly in price. And again, if you have a lot of older giant figures, or you have the Reaper figures, not too bad. Pardon me. I'm sorry about that. Not too bad of a deal for what you get in the box. So I hope that helps. This was Marty Walzer, the Raging Owlbear, my quick little 10-minute video on giants. Have a good day.